So hi Danielle, it's great to speak with you today. Um, I'd love to kick off and ask, what era of children's media did you grow up with?
Oh, so yeah, born in the late 80s. So I suppose really it was early 90s when I first became aware of it. Yeah.
But I kind of hear you're a big fan of reading. So I feel like the obvious question is, what were some of your favorite books?
Oh, yeah. So when I was really young, I used to love Mog the Cat. That was my favorite. And the Hungry Caterpillar as well. He was pretty neat. And I remember as I grew up, my favorite author was Tamora Pierce. That was very much in my early teens, and I used to love her books, and it was always about really strong female characters, and I guess it really brought out my love for history as well. It was all about female knights, and there was archery in there as well, which I think sort of really engaged me with the sporting side too. And I am one of those people that I tend to read books over and over and over again. I'm very much a skim reader, which means I read things super quickly. But it's really great because when I pick up a book for the second time, I kind of pick out things that I've missed first time around. So yeah, it's like reading a book again and again.
Yeah, I think your love of reading turned into a love of writing. When did you first discover you had a love of writing?
I think for as long as uh, I've been aware, I've always wanted to be a writer. And I think from the age of 4, if you asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I'd always say a writer. And I remember my mum and dad were always, they were always very supportive of my dreams. But I think they were worried that if I just said a writer, that I'd narrow it down a bit, because there are only sort of a really marginal amount of people who are very successful in this field. So it was always like, and so you want to be a writer, and that's kind of how I grew up, and I suppose how I saw writing, that it was a career, but you could very excitingly do it alongside something else.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I very much feel like your and turned out to be a very successful career as a Paralympian. As the audience probably knows from reading your bio, you're very well known for being a two-time gold medal Olympic Paralympian in archery. Where did your passions from sports start from?
Yeah, do you know, it has to be my parents. So I was very fortunate. I grew up in a beautiful part of the world, very close to the Yorkshire Dales. So getting outdoors was quite easy, and I spent most of my childhood walking up mountains, camping, cycling, and it was all sort of very much those family activities, which I absolutely loved doing. So I had that love for sport, and my parents really did create a lot of opportunities for me to try different sports. So, they didn't want to just push me down one route. It was, if there's an opportunity to do something, say yes, go for it, see how it is. And which was amazing. It meant I got to try loads and loads of different things, but I was rubbish at them all. So yeah, I've got two younger sisters. They both used to beat me when we raced, when we were running. I actually got a certificate that said achieve more swimming than canoeing when I did a canoeing course. And yeah, not very good at swimming either. On my attempts at golf were horrible as well. So yeah, it was great fun. And I never did it with a career in mind. I just did it for fun. And it was just something we all did as a family.
I mean, you said that you weren't that very good at sport, but clearly you're very good at archery. So what made you pick archery?
Yeah, I found the one that I was gonna. Yeah, so it was my disability that made me, or ended up down that route. So when I was 11, my feet started to hurt after I'd been running. It was more of a minor inconvenience to start with, but by the age of 13, it was really quite impacting my daily life. So I was struggling to walk, get around school. So all of the things that involve running and walking longer distances just became impossible to do. So at the time, I hadn't got a diagnosis. I didn't get diagnosed with a condition called complex regional pain syndrome until I was 16 years old. So it was a long time without a diagnosis. but I didn't know much about Paralympic sport at the time either. You know, there was not really that much information about it. So I figured I was down to either archery or swimming, and playing with bows and arrows just seemed a bit more exciting than bobbing up and down in a pool.
Did being in sport impact your writing and impact your creativity?
Yeah, I think as I grew as an athlete, I learned lots of transferable skills, and I actually consider sport to be my biggest teacher in so many ways. You know, I think it taught me the important stuff. So it taught me all about discipline. It taught me about goals, setting the bar really high, and actually how to break that goal down so it became achievable. It taught me a lot about communication and how you get a message across. And also really about the brand of me, so really getting that bit across, and which really, when you look at the writing side of things, that's sort of been really, really important in terms of the messages that I'm trying to put across to young children.
What made you, you know, kind of out of curiosity, what made you choose to do a degree in law? You know, particularly when, by the sounds of it, you were doing particularly well in sports.
I've always been quite academic, and that was kind of where I saw my career going. Sport was just a hobby. I didn't realize I could have a career in that. It was just something, I suppose, that you did for fun at the end of the day. So yeah, I just sort of got involved with archery when I was 15. And because it was really fun. I'd found a sport that I could do with my disability, but also it was very much a coping mechanism. So when I was shooting, I wasn't concentrating on the pain that I was in. So I got quite obsessive with it in some ways. So if I was well enough to get through school, I was well enough to go to archery at the end of the day. So it's sort of my real motivation and drive. And yeah, I just both took off. And I remember going to hospital once I got my diagnosis. We went to this London hospital, and one of the doctors told me I'd got a choice to make. I could either choose my studies or my archery, but I couldn't do both. And I did make a choice. I chose not to go back to the doctors because, you know, I wasn't going to give up something that was going to give me a career, or the thing that I really loved. So I decided that I could do both, and it was just about how I did that and finding the way. But yeah, law, the reason I decided to go for that was my initial plan was a vet. I love animals. I did some work experience, absolutely hated it, had a bit of panic thinking, what do I do? What do I do? And I figured law seemed quite well paid, well respected, and you got to go to work dressed up in a wig and a cape. So that was the plan.
Was it a challenge doing that alongside, you know, being a Paralympian representing, you know, the UK?
Yeah, really tough, really tough. For Beijing, I actually took a year out as a prepared, but going back into my second year, yeah, it was bonkers. I was training 6 days a week. Leicester, where I was at, they didn't have an archery club at the university, so I was travelling to Loughborough 3 times a week, and I was travelling up to the National Sports Centre 3 times a week as well. So really, it was just go go go. You know, my day was so regimented: get up early, do a bit of studying, go to lectures, go to shooting, go to training, and repeat. And yeah, I really didn't have a spare moment for the last 2 years, which was very, very hard. I by the time I graduated, I was sort of operating on burnout.
So I'm assuming during that period, maybe your reading and writing took a backseat in the creative sense and was maybe a bit more legal focused.
I kind of did that for fun. So I've always written, and yeah, I've written some really bad stuff through the years. But I just that was my out
Mhm.
again, you know, because I think my archery start has been my out, which I love doing. But at home, I guess I needed another one. And then when I got into competitions, you started getting a bit more pressure. So, you know, it wasn't just about going there and flinging a load of arrows. You were there. It was all sort of very purposeful. in terms of that regime. So being able to have another out was really helpful. So yeah, around it, I didn't get to do as much writing, but I still tried to fit a little bit in. Because for me, that was really my self-care. That was my me time.
How do you feel, right now? And I'm really interested to hear when you were growing up as well. How do you feel representation has been, not just for women in sports, but also people with disabilities, and particularly in children's media?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, two separate things there, I suppose. Women in sports, terrible. I think it is getting better, but particularly when I was growing up, I didn't think I could have a career in sport, not just because I was really bad at it, but because I didn't see other women succeeding or failing at sport. You just didn't see them. I think I could name a couple of tennis players and maybe the odd skier, but that was only because I, insisted watching Ski Sunday every Sunday. But that was it. And I think that there are so many women out there that are achieving so many amazing things, but we don't hear about those stories even now, and we don't hear about them to the same extent. And I did see a recent figure that said 7% of the UK's sport media is focused on women's sport. So, which really is a shocking figure when, you do have so many talented athletes out there. Growing up with a disability, I did spend a lot of my teenage years living in fear because I always had these big dreams, but I felt that my disability, because I knew so little about disability, and in the area that I grew up with, it wasn't very visible at all. So I just worried that people wouldn't be able to see me as a person and the value that I held. All they would see is my crutches or my wheelchair, and that's how I'd be judged. And I really, really do think that a lot of this was to do with a lack of representation, but also misrepresentation. So that when you do see a disabled character, a lot of the time there was the pity, there was the inspiration, and it just wasn't put across really well. And growing up as a teenager, I did feel so isolated. The only role model I could name was Stephen Hawking. And whilst he's an amazing, amazing guy, so many achievements and a really cool role model, I just didn't feel that it related to me. So yeah, it was a very, very lonely time. And I do think that representation really could have helped at that time. And again, we are getting better, but I still think out of all of the protected characteristics, disability is the one that lags behind really, really badly. And it's something that I think we do need to invest more time into really putting across in the right way.
You've been writing bits and pieces for your entire life since you were younger. What really sparked you to move into writing a book, but actually maybe more importantly, a children's book?
Yeah, I love working with children. For me, being able to give something back, put something back, because really the people that supported me as a young person allowed me to go and achieve all these amazing things as an athlete. So yeah, I love that inspiring piece with young people. And I was speaking at an event about what it takes to be the best in the world when a 7-year-old boy, Nathan Kai, came up to me and asked me if I had written a book for children about how they could be the best they could be. And he'd been looking for a book like this, but just couldn't find one. So I said, no, it was a really good idea. And he came back and he said, can we write one together? And I was so amazed because I always tell people, say yes to opportunities. If there's an opportunity there for you, just say yes, jump at it and figure it out along the way. And I do think that's a sort of a really, really important skill. But the reality is that for many, many children, the opportunities aren't always there for them to say yes to. And I was just so amazed by Nathan that at 7 years old, that not only had he sort of wanted this opportunity, but he'd come up with the solution to get there that wouldn't just help him, but help other children as well. And it was just so amazing working with him. We were writing the chapters, we discussed what it meant to be the best you could be. I sort of wrote my 3 chapters and sent them over to edit, my first 3 chapters, and he sent a couple over to me to edit. And I was thinking, I know this stuff, I teach this stuff all the time, and it came back covered in strike throughs, which is just really hilarious and really, really great, because working with him really allowed me to understand things better from a child's perspective, and really what children want and need, and how to put information across in a really accessible way. So it was just amazing. And yeah, I took him to the London Book Fair. And my mission was to get him there and back without losing him, because I've never been responsible for a child before. So yeah, his mum sent us off that morning to the book fair, and we came away with a publishing deal with GMC, which is amazing. And it's just gone on from there. So yeah.
During this year's conference, you've got your next book coming out. What made you, I'm assuming you enjoyed writing the children's book so much the first time, that you're planning on sticking around in the industry, because this next one is also another children's book. What's it about?
Yes, so my next book called Run Like a Girl, and it features 50 female athletes from all around the world, and it's really focusing on those human stories. And yeah, absolutely love doing it. It was just so inspiring doing all the research. I was churning chapters out every week just because I was so inspired, doing all the reading, doing all the writing, which is just amazing. But again, why I decided to do it was really because of that poor representation that I experienced. And whilst it has got better, we do have some amazing female role models out there. So many amazing stories go under the radar, or again, they're misrepresented. And a lot of female athletes, I know we complain about how a lot of the focus is on how we look, not necessarily how we perform. And the reason as well why it's called Run Like a Girl, and every chapter focuses on that like a girl. So shoot like a girl, catch like a girl, throw like a girl. And the reason I focused on that was I just remember, again, as an athlete, if one of my teammates weren't doing very well, and particularly the male ones, they'd be always like, oh, I'm shooting like a girl. And it's just like, hang on a minute, I'm beating you, so this should not be an insult. So yeah, but it really was seen as, like a girl. It was inferior, it was substandard. And I just wanted to put across these incredible stories that aren't all about winning. A lot of it is about pushing through adversity, breaking barriers, some of them breaking records, some real like endurance adventure stuff, as well as our amazing gold medal winning Olympians. So it's just really enjoyed writing that. And yeah, I am here to stay. I do have a children's literary agent now as well. So loads of exciting stuff in the pipeline.
So lots of, hopefully, lots of more of your sort of inner child coming out and writing more in the future. Yeah. Well, thank you, Danielle, for speaking to us today here at CMC. And we wish you the best with kind of all your future endeavors. It's been really interesting to kind of go back to the beginning and learn more about, your history and your route into children's media. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Great to be here.